What has gone wrong in America? The White House Correspondents Dinner descended into chaos on Saturday after a suspect armed with multiple guns and knives charged past security in an apparent attempt to reach U.S. President Donald Trump. Shots were fired and the president, his wife and vice president, as well as other high-ranking cabinet members and lawmakers were quickly evacuated. Journalists on site described the scene as total panic and pandemonium. Although President Trump praised the security staff for doing a great job, it has raised serious questions about the president's security detail. But the larger question remains on the motivations of the suspect, Tomas Allen, a 31-year-old teacher from California. If established that Allen was indeed targeting the president, this would be at least the third attempt on Trump's life in the past couple of years. What were Allen's intentions? What's fueling this apparent new normal of political violence in America, and what may be the knock-on effects for the wider world? Welcome to this special edition of The Point with me, Li Xin, an opinion show coming to you live from Beijing. Joining us to unpack all the latest developments on this, I'm pleased to be joined from Beijing by Professor David Moser in the International Culture Institute at Capital Normal University, and here in the studio, Einar Tangen, Senior Fellow at the Center for International Governance Innovation, and also in the studio, Rong Ying, Senior Research Fellow of the China Institute of International Studies. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. First of all, let's look at the potential intentions of the suspect, Tomas Allen. Now, what we know is that he is a 31 teacher from Southern California. As I said, he is also an amateur video developer. He graduated from California Institute of Technology in 2017 with a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering and received a master degree in computer science from California State University, Dominguez Hills last year. He donated to Kamala Harris's presidential campaign in 2024. So, Einar, let me go to you first. What do we know about Allen so far?
Well, he's a school teacher. He was a teacher of the year, or voted teacher of the year. He just recently graduated from his master's program at Dominguez in 2025. But what you have to do is start looking at the similarities and differences. Now, there have been 3 attempts on Donald Trump's life. All of them were white men. One very young, this one in kind of mid-20s, and then somebody who was in their upper 50s, almost 60 years old. None of them were migrants. None of them were minorities. This one had credentials. Getting a master's from Dominguez is not easy. Caltech is not easy for somebody. But he's been described as very focused, very technical, and he had his own kind of reasons for this. He did post some sort of manifesto, and we'll have to see what it says.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we did, find more information about the writings he did after staying in the hotel, actually, and he sent the so-called manifesto to his friends, which prompted some of them to alert the police. And in that writing, he did not mention the dinner, nor did he name the president directly, but he called himself a friendly federal assassin, and he was listing his targets. He was, listing his targets from according to their rank. So I want to go online to Professor David Moser. What do you see in this person, and what are you gathering from the writing he has shared with his family moments before he stormed security?
Yes, it's a bit disturbing that some of the assassins, or would-be assassins that Einar just mentioned, were sort of loners, didn't have much of a social life. This is someone who had a background. He was well-educated, and he seemed to have a circle of friends and educated people that would say that he wouldn't go down this dark road. The manifesto that his family received said that they thought that he had gone over the edge. He had broken his mental facilities that had been broken. I think that, for me, I'm thinking, no matter how well educated he is, he was obviously spending a lot of time on social media, which is very toxic and poisonous. And even though he had a social life, he obviously became highly politicized. And and began to have delusions of grandeur that he could actually go out and change this situation that it made him so angry and frustrated. So for me, I think I would lay it on the incredibly polarized atmosphere in the United States, and the fact that everyone is susceptible to it. If you spend all day long watching social media, it changes your brain, and people get into loose cannons.
Mr. Rong Ying, what have you noticed that's particularly concerning, both from his career, that he was even a model teacher of the month, according to his institution, and there's no black spots, there's no dark spots associated with his name, and yet all of a sudden he has decided to go down this very radicalized and extreme path. What has caught your attention here?
Indeed, I think, let me first of all, condemn this development. I think very much disturbing. Any forms of violence should be condemned. Fortunately, I think, nothing serious has been happened. For Chinese viewers, for me in particular, the question is why? Yeah, given the fact that he is well-educated and middle class, if I can say, and it seems that it's very much related so far. From the press reports in the United States, it related to political. So political motivation or the motive is very much an issue. And also, I think for Chinese viewers is the question of the gun culture, the gun violence. He acquired, according to press reports, legally his sort of guns, shotguns, and it seems I did not run into many difficulties of carrying these weapons, guns, by train. And Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. is far different. Traveled, yeah. And without any difficulties in getting in Washington, Hilton, and it's without difficulty. And he also, I think, marked the security sort of things. And also, last but not least, I think the way that the press, in general, I think the press report that condemned that violence, but there are also on social media conspiracy theories about the motivations, right, or what organizations behind the reason that. So there are many questions, and of course, it's all related to the political violence targeting, mostly, I think, President Trump. And historically, look at the American president in recent decades, starting from, I think for Chinese, we all remember JFK Kennedy, the assassination, and also the files, which I think also, by the way, President Trump has pushed for release. And also, I think the same venue where President Reagan suffered attempted assassination back in 1981. So it's very much yes, yeah. Much.
But the fundamental question a lot of people are asking, and you hear, for instance, Allen mentioning not the president in his writing, but for twice he was alluding to a pedophile, rapist, and traitor. Einar, from what you can gather now, what exactly is the goal here?
For this gentleman, he thought he was standing up. You have to remember, America was a revolutionary country. It threw off, this idea of having a king. He was attended the No Kings rally, at least one of them on record. He did give $25 to Kamala Harris, but that was before. I think there's a large group of people in the United States who are hurting, and there's this victimization narrative which is uppermost. Ironically, with Donald Trump, he's always complaining that he's getting a bad deal, and, that people aren't going along with him. Even using this tragedy, or personal tragedy for this young man, to try to push for this ballroom that is bound up in legal affairs. But this goes to a much deeper issue in the United States. President Trump has pushed gun ownership. He says it should be free. You should be able to go where you want. Quite frankly, he didn't need to take a train. All you have to do is check your guns in your luggage. You can't carry it on the plane, but you can put it in your luggage and you can carry it. And lots of guns go through airports every single day in the United States, so it's not unusual. He didn't have a record, so he could easily get these weapons. They didn't check his mental health. There was no reason to. So therefore, when you have a gun culture and you have a victimization culture, it can lead to conspiracies, and then people get, they go down this rabbit hole, as my colleague said, on social media, which kind of amplifies all their fears. And this is a real danger, not just to America, but to any society.
Professor Moser, what is your take on the ultimate goal of this attacker, and what wider or deeper social problem is it revealing? Exactly what is the cause, the fundamental cause of what we're seeing here? Apparently a surge of political violence, would you agree?
Yes, certainly political divisiveness, which as it increases can lead to violence. I've been in the U.S. Or I've been a U.S. citizen since since I was born, and I've seen political divisiveness all throughout my youth and up till now. But I've never seen it at such a level that it is now. I think that in a certain sense, President Trump, although he was very sort of accommodating, talking about lowering the level of violence on speech the other night, I think he has something to be criticized here. He's being a bit hypocritical. He is a president who has continually attacked freedom of speech, calling for the firing of news hosts, stand-up comedians, reporters, commentators, or anyone who dared to criticize him. And even just today, I saw clips of an interview just the day after, and the moderator, the host, read part of the sort of manifesto that called him a rapist and a traitor. And he called the journalist. He said she was disgraceful, unpatriotic, and she should be ashamed of herself. But Trump continues this divisiveness, continues to exacerbate this sort of political fight that we're going on between the left and the right. We're getting more in siloed media, where the left will only watch left-wing media and the right only watch right-wing media. Trump bears some responsibility for this, and he is making it worse. I'm not saying he deserves it, but we have to be clear that we have a very special president here who has only thrown gasoline on the fire. And we need to admit he has, if we're going to start lowering the temperature, we need to start with him.
Mr. Rong, what is your reaction? I mean, of course, the feud between the president and the press, the mainstream press in the United States. I actually also watched the interview that Professor Moser was talking about, and it is a very weird experience to watch that interview, because on the one hand he was sitting down and trying to engage with the speaker with the interview. It was on CBS, but on the other hand he was attacking and basically shaming the institution and the journalist herself. But on the other hand, some people would say, look, the press, the mainstream press, had been extremely critical of President Trump ever since the first term, before he became president for the first time. And you really don't know where did things come to this far. So how do you look at the apparently irreconcilable feud between the president and the press? How is that impacting the society?
Yeah, very much so. As far as I can see that even though I think the fact that he, for the first time, attended that gala, if I can say, and the promise or the announcement that after that incident, he at the press briefing at the White House a few hours later, he promised it will do it again.
He would do the gala again.
Yeah, again. Yeah. But and he also, interestingly, talked about the importance or necessity of have a ballroom at the White House, which I think had the difficulties, problems with preservation and whatever things. So it seems that definitely he has a very difficult sort of time or a relationship with the press in general, criticizing the press being biased. But I thought for observers, for people like I think myself and others, he is adopting a quite selective approach. So if there's any bias, as far as I can see, that he himself, President Trump, is as biased as, the alleged, the press. And the interview you mentioned with CBS is a telling example that while I think his original intention maybe try to present it in a way that he was calm, he was responding in a way that as supposed to be. But when the sensitive issue, literally I think the interviewer was reading
right.
the message, but they say, I shouldn't do that and that.
Quoting the pedophile, rapist, and traitor. I think that's what set it off.
So I thought that being very much counterproductive, and in a way very much reflect the divisiveness of the society, which possibly lead to the political violence. If we are talking about background of the suspect, talking about his manifesto, and talk about, I think, what he wanted to do, despite the fact it seems that it's just a suicidal attempt. Yeah.
Einar, well, this manifesto is he didn't say it as a manifesto, it's what is described as a manifesto. Einar, how do you look at the intensity of the hate, the width of the divide between different political affiliations? It seems that people have given up on trying to protest, have their voices heard, or try the power of persuasion. They have opted for physical destruction. And this is not the first time. As I said, 3 attempts targeting Trump himself, and then there are other political violence, for instance, at a congressional baseball practice, at a Charlottesville church activity, and the assassination attempt against former speakers of U.S. state, and of course the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Is there a new normal of high-intensity political hate and divide in the United States?
I think you're missing one important one, and that is what happened with Donald Trump incited a riot to prevent the orderly transition
the congressional,
of power.
The Capitol Hill.
So you have to push all these things together. It's not just on one side. In fact, you had the largest demonstration in history, other than one other, I think, Black Lives Matter, of 8 million people who did this No Kings things. There are active protests going on. But let's delve a little deeper. In 1971, 61% of America was middle class. If you use the same metrics in 2024, it had gone down to 40%. Yes, there had been an increase in the upper middle class, but it didn't cover the losses. America's hurting. Over 60% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have $400 in case of an emergency. So this is a situation where Americans feel fragile. They voted for a candidate who said he was going to make sure there are no more wars, endless wars, costly wars, that he was going to pay attention to prices and the American dream and creating more jobs. And unfortunately, none of that has come true. So you take this victimization narrative, which was on display, literally, when he attacked this journalism. It's me, you're attacking me. It's all about me. And unfortunately, this leads to a situation which just exacerbates these feelings of polarization, of despair, and it won't end until America finds a leader who wants to pull America back together again.
David Moser joining us online. What do you see as the fundamental causes of the ills in the American society, and what would be the turning point? Because this is the 3rd attempt, and President Trump, when he was addressing the press shortly after the incident, he struck a rather positive tone. He was saying that the fact that they just unified us in a room, that was just totally unified, it was in one way very beautiful, a very beautiful thing to see. He also called on Americans to recommit with their hearts to resolving our differences peacefully. Do you think this incident will change things?
Well, obviously not, since on day two, he was back to criticizing the media. And let's be clear, President Trump is very transactional. If you criticize him, then you're enemy number one. If you praise him, flatter him, then he loves you. And what happened with this particular White House Correspondents' Dinner was, in the past, he refused to take part or attend because one of the features of it is a stand-up comedian who will stand up and make fun of the president, make jokes about the president. It's a long tradition. Some people might remember Joe Wong, a Chinese comedian who
Right.
stood up in front of Vice President Biden then and poked fun at him, and Biden loved it. Trump is a totally different person. He hates any kind of criticism, even satire. And so that's why he attended this dinner, because they actually invited him as a sort of a measure of goodwill. Yeah, come and be with us, and we'll try to just focus the invitation, which caused this change in rhetoric. So, but the problem is now, I think for him, his problem is that he has made this a unitary president. He's made it a kingship. He doesn't cooperate with Congress. He doesn't get permission with. He ignores Supreme Court and lower court mandates. So he has put himself as an emperor, or as the person who is the leader, one person leader of the United States of America. So it's not so amazing that all the attention is on him and not just the government in broadly speaking. Anything that goes wrong, such as this Iran fiasco, it's him. He's taken all the credit, but now he has to take all the blame. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe he's been attempts on his life have been so prevalent, because he himself has put a bullseye on his back, being the only one who seems to be in charge. Everyone else is just following sycophants that just follow his rule.
Mr. Rong, what do you think of what David just said? I think he has made a very interesting point, because everything is about him. He taking the credit, he claims wins. He is always on the media, always leading the media, leading the discussion. And now, people point their hatred or affection toward him as a person instead of the system or, the government. Do you think this is a reason why there's so much pointed, attention or hatred that we're seeing in the United States?
I think very much so, in a way that not only I think the president or presidency is supposed to exercise or demonstrate the leadership, and in a way that brings the divide and provide answers to the questions or challenges the United States has been facing politically, economically, and I think increasingly in the diplomatic front. And in the meantime, I think the way that President himself and President Trump, in claiming all the credit while shifting the blame to the others, is something, of course, very much, I think, goes exactly the opposite. And furthermore, as I think United States is celebrating or commemorating the 250 years of its founding, bigger questions are asking that over the past 250 years, how much the United States has been losing in terms of not only domestically, but also in the world in showcasing or demonstrating that how, as a young nation and in such short of period of time, to become a so-called leader of the world.
But time is very limited. I want to follow up on this, what you just said. How is this going to impact America's foreign policy and its role, its position in the wider world? Briefly.
Well, I think the Chinese always like to say that if you want to do well, you influence the others, you have to do yourself. You put your house in order. So I think that is largely the reason, at least domestically, for the United States is now more losing sort of influence or the capability to influence what is happening, not to mention the mistakes or the way that President Trump has been demonstrating inner capabilities or unwillingness to face up the reality.
Einar, what is your take on the potential knock-on effect? First of all, on Trump's character, I don't know whether there will be any impact or his policies as a result of this. What do you think?
No, this is a welcome diversion, and I don't mean that he welcomes assassination attempts, but this has taken the Epstein files off the table. It's also put Iran in a second position, and questions about his family's wealth and how much it has increased during his first year, failed financial policies. He can now sit there and say, well, I'm a victim. People, hate me, and you should support me. So, but it doesn't have any effect whatsoever on the United States foreign policy. It will remain the same.
David, what is your take? Is this going to affect both, starting from the Trump administration itself, but also from the perception of America? Do you think anything will change as a result of this?
No, I don't think there's much hope for change right now, partially or mostly because of what I said. We have a president of the United States that is magnificently unfit for this office right now at this vantage point in New York, in the United States culture. I think that it looks bad from the outside world. Why are there so many guns? Why are there so many disenchanted people? I think that Trump himself is just inherently incapable of changing his rhetoric. And so I think, right now what's going to happen is the right-wing media, Fox News and others, are going to point to this and say, see, the Democrats are the party of violence and of political divisiveness. And then the left will keep saying the same thing, which is true, but we have a very divisive president. So I don't see any hope for this improving, precisely because the only person who can really alleviate it would be President Trump, and he's not the person that can even do that. He's a narcissist.
Oh, well, we don't have someone who's a supporter of Trump to defend on his behalf for this discussion, so I do want to make that clear. If what you all have just said is correct, and I want to leave the last question to you, what would it take for things to change course?
It takes a different kind of leader. You need somebody who has empathy. Donald Trump has displayed on many times that he doesn't. It needs somebody who recognizes that the United States is the most powerful nation on earth, but it's one of many nations. And unfortunately, it's just not in his playbook. He's transactional.
Until his term runs out, do you think things will get worse in terms of the level of violence?
I do think so, because he's going to lose the midterms, and when that happens, he's going to retreat into a bunker mentality and try to use the office as an imperial presidency. This is going to result in a lot more people feeling that he's not representing America, people taking actions into their own hands. I do not approve of any violence, and neither does anybody I have met in China or abroad. But when you start a ball in motion, when you throw gasoline on a fire, you cannot be surprised at what happens.
Thank you so much, the gentlemen here, for sharing with us your precious insight. David Moser joining us online, Einar Tangen and Rong Ying here in the studio. Thank you very much. And that's it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you from Beijing as usual. You can follow me on Facebook, X, and YouTube using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got The Point.